My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Quiltin', Stitchin', and Kitties. I hope life has been treating you well lately. Things seem to be a little tough right now. Today I'm going to show you a simple quilted tote bag. And don't worry if you've never done anything like it before, it isn't that difficult. And they're fun. Tote bags are so useful. As I live in Arizona, I have to carry water around with me wherever, whenever I go. And there's always something that you think, oh, maybe I'll need this, and you can stick it in a little tote bag. Plus, they're great for gifts. For someone who doesn't sew or doesn't quilt, getting a handmade tote bag in a fabric that you've picked for them is pretty exciting. So let's get started. I've already cut out my backing and batting, and I have the top all made for the tote bag. And what I do first is I figure out what size I want. And it's really a pretty simple formula. This will be close. It may not be exactly the measurements that you want, but it's going to be very close. Because with sewing, there's always some adjusting to do. So you take the width that you want and you add 2 inches to it. That's to allow for seam allowance. So let's say you want it to end up 16 wide, then you add 2 inches to it, so your width needs to be 18. Okay, your height. Think about it. Your height is going to be double because it's down one side and up the other. So let's say you want a height of 16. Double it. That gives you 32. Add an inch for seam allowances, and then add 3 inches for the boxed corners. So basically, you're taking your double and you're adding 4 inches to it. So double 16, you get 32. Add 4 inches to it, you get 36. So notice the width I have to cut is 18, the height is 36. So it pretty much holds true that you're going to need double your width for your length. Now, if you have to have a seam in the middle, you definitely will have to add more for seam allowances. And we're going to do 1/2 inch seam allowances because of the fact that we are going to be going through 3 layers. So here is an example of a little tote bag. This was made with Australian fabric. It has box corners. It has a full lining inside. It has straps with batting inside. And it has binding. So this one is approximately a little over 12 inches wide and not quite 12 inches tall, which is a nice size tote bag. Of course, you can make them bigger, smaller, whatever you want to do. So I've given you the measurement information, and you can decide. You might want to use scraps for your first one just to see how it goes, or be brave and pick something really fun. So after you've got your inside, which I'm calling the backing, and your batting, just put them on a flat surface and smooth them. Always smooth from the inside out. So smooth up, smooth down, smooth off to the sides. And by doing that, you're going to get very, very flat fabric. Do it 4 or 5 times, whatever it takes, and make sure you don't feel any bubbles, any wrinkles on the inside. Okay, once you've done that, just turn it over. Do the same thing again. Pick off any little pieces of thread you find and just smooth from the inside out. Once again, make sure you don't feel any bubbles. Then it's time to put your top on. So today I went to one of my favorite quilt shops in town to look for something fun. And they had a brand new panel with this beautiful owl and this beautiful butterfly, plus a hedgehog, a hummingbird, and 2 others. So I don't normally buy panels, but something just drew me to this one today. Because they weren't big enough, I had to add a border. And to keep it going in the right direction, both facing up, I had to sew them together. So notice that when I hold this together like a bag, the owl is up, the butterfly is up. So be very careful with directional fabric. Maybe for your first one, don't use directional fabric. Make it easier on yourself. The backing or inside of the bag is not directional. So now I'm just going to take my top or the outside of the bag and I'm going to lay it on my back, my batting. I'm going to make sure and get it nice and smooth and inside the batting. Don't take any chances on the edge. But if you do, let's say you're off just a little bit, you can always trim a little bit from the sides or a little bit from the top and the bottom. And if you make a bag and decide, oh, you know, this is a little tall for me, I didn't want it quite this big, just trim a little bit from the top and the bottom. That's okay. Because once you've got it quilted, it's going to be easy. So now, once again, I'm just smoothing like crazy and laying it all out nice. Okay, at this point, you need to baste because you're going to quilt this. You can think about how you like to quilt it before you start, so that depending on how you want to do your placement of pins, I'm probably just going to do either cross hatching or straight lines like a checkerboard. You do want it reasonably stable because these are washable and you will be able to wash them. Okay, you can use safety pins, which is always probably a pretty good idea because it's not quite as hard to cut yourself. These are those special quilter's pins that have a little notch in them so that when you put them through the fabric and come back up, they're easier to close. If you're brave, which I am occasionally, I use flat head pins, which are very long, very easy to use, but you have to be really careful when you're quilting to make sure you don't poke yourself. You can thread based, you can spray based. I live in Arizona, we have a lot of static. I never need to spray based. I just basically stick a few pins in and I'm absolutely fine. So now it's time to quilt. I'll be back. Well, I got my tote bag all marked, got it all pinned, and now I'm getting ready to quilt it. Well, I'm all ready to quilt using my Bernina B790 Crystal Edition. Very lucky to have it. I'm using my even feed foot attachment. One on a Bernina just comes down from the back. It acts like a quilting foot, so you definitely would want to use a quilting foot. For thread, I've decided to use So Fine by Superior Threads, number 445, called Fern, and it's very, very close to the green, and it looks great across it. And all I'm going to do is start sort of in a middle section, and I'm going to go all the way across, and then I'm going to work out to the sides. That's the best way to not get wrinkles in the middle. So I would like a little bit bigger stitch length. So instead of 250, I'm going to use, oops, hit the wrong button here. I think I'm going to use a 280, 275, 280. I'm going to use a 280. I don't quite want to go to 3. It's a little big. You can go ahead and backstitch on the edge of your seams. It doesn't really matter, but if it makes you more secure, I have marked it with chalk, and I will show you the chalk pencil. And I'm just making sure and supporting the fabric, kind of spreading it out. I am not pushing, I'm not pulling, I'm just basically supporting it. And I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way for you. So that's all I'm doing. I'm basically letting the machine move the fabric. If I see that it's getting a little crooked, then I'm just going to stop. I'm going to adjust my stitch and off I go. And that's it. It's just going to spend some time. I decided to use safety pins on the centers, and then I just use long pins on the outside. And I'm going to get that chalk marker and I will show that to you. Here's the chalk marker I told you about. It's called a bohin, B-O-H-I-N. It's sort of like those chalk holders that teachers used to use years ago when they had chalk on a blackboard. Holds the chalk inside, advances by pushing this, and the chalk comes out. It is machine washable. Most of the time, you can just rub it out. It's great. And it's kind of a medium-sized point. It's not like a full piece of chalk. It's not like a skinny pencil. So it marks at about 1/16 of an inch wide, and it's really easy to see when you're working. And then you brush it out. If you are a safety pin baster, there's a tool called a quick clip. KWIKKLIP. Quick clip. Wooden handle, metal end with grooves in it. When you put your pin in, you take this, and instead of trying to grab it with your fingers, you put the metal part underneath the tip of the pin. Very difficult to see. And you use that to push up the safety pin and get it in the hole and get it closed. Saves your fingers, really does. Probably one of the best tools I've ever had. And they seem to last forever. I think I've probably had this one 10, 15 years. So that's it for now. My bag is now completely quilted. I added a few extra lines going across the center of the blocks just to stabilize them. I felt like they needed a little bit more. And the other thing that I did, which is totally optional, is on the edges, I did a zigzag stitch going over the edge to finish the edges on the inside of the bag. So the stitch length that I used was 1.3 and my width was 4.0, and it was just a regular zigzag. So now we're ready, after it's all trimmed, of course, to start putting the bag together. So we put right sides together, and we're going to pin the side seams. So I want to get it as even as absolutely possible. And you can use any kind of pins. I use these pretty big pins because now I'm going through 6 layers, 2 layers of batting and 4 layers of fabric. And I'm going to do side seams on both of these sides. This is the top opening. So just the side seams, the bottom is already put together. You can use half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, or an inch on your side seams. Your choice. It doesn't matter. If your bag's a little wide, perhaps you might want to make a little bit wider seam. I would go no smaller than a half an inch and no bigger than a full inch. So just regular stitching, and use not a huge stitch. I would say no bigger than 2.5, probably better at maybe 2.3, and stitch your side seams together. I'll do that and be right back.